Are you getting ready to run a new game? Or maybe one with just new players or a system you've never played before? Well, if you are, you're probably spending some time thinking about how you're going to run your session zero. But let me ask you this. Have you thought about what you're going to do before zero? So about a year ago, I was getting a new campaign starters with a bunch of new people who had never played before. I had never actually played with all of these people. I knew them from different contexts, but not in a gaming context. And the whole thing was made a little more difficult by the fact that we were going to play a game called Stars Without Number. Have you noticed in the last few years, there have been a lot of video games that promise you a big sprawling galaxy with limitless stuff to do and lots of planets and lots of aliens and space stations and resources and animals and all kinds of things that you can do. And you can go wherever you want to go and you can do whatever you want to do and you just hop in your ship and you go and you have an adventure. That's like Stars Without Numbers. If you want to play that, but in a tabletop game, you want to get Stars Without Numbers. It's a hard sci-fi game, and it's got lasers and aliens and maps and ships and all that good stuff. And then it gets bigger. It gets larger from there. You can do kind of anything you want with the game. In fact, if you especially if you're like me and you get a whole bunch of supplement books from Bundle of Holding, and I got them all. So like you could do a merchant campaign if you want to do a space merchant campaign where you buy low and you sell high and you're going to different planets and you're maybe even building whole industries and you're getting more ships and making tons and tons of space money, and everybody likes space money. Who doesn't like space money? That's why they call it space money. Or you could be mercenaries. You want to be mercenaries? Do you like power armor? Do you like mechs? Do you like drop ships? Do you like jumping out of the drop ships in your power armor and then there's mechs? You could play that in Stars Without Number. You could play fleet battles. You could be like officers on a naval fleet, space naval fleet, obviously, and you could go around and do space naval stuff. You could do all of that. Or you could be smugglers. You could be like a ragtag bunch of scoundrels and smugglers going around and having adventures. I mean, you could do real. Oh. There's psychics. Do you like psychics? Do you like space psychics? You could be space psychics, or you could be space. You could be the space psychic cops, or you could be the space psychics on the run from the space psychic cops, and you're building your merchant empire, and you're also a ragtag. You can do. Look, you can do anything. You do anything in this game, and that was the problem that I had, which is you could do anything. And I explained the game to my players, and they're all lovely people, and I told them ahead of time, and they said the thing that you kind of want to hear, but really if you're experienced you understand what it means, and the terror involved in it is they all said, yeah, sounds like fun. But here's the problem. Your fun and my fun and everybody's fun. I had like 7 players. Everybody's fun, they might have read a little different. They might have not meant the exact same thing when they said fun. So I had to figure out, okay, I've got all these people. I want to make sure we have a good time. I don't want to waste everyone's time. I don't want to invite everybody over for game night. And we're figuring all this stuff out. I want to figure out a way. Is there a way to figure this out and get ideas on where everyone is and what they want to do, and also what do they not want to do? Because there's any number of things you can have happen at game night that can really spoil the mood for one person or more than one person, and we want to avoid that. And so I thought, how can I figure this out for all these people? So there's actually a good answer in an old Matt Colville episode. Now, he was talking about Dungeons and Dragons. All the advice, by the way, I'm giving here, I try to keep it as universal as possible. In fact, on this note, if you don't like Stars Without Number, you're like, oh, I don't like sci-fi, I'm more of a fantasy guy. Well, guess what? Kevin Crawford, the guy who made Stars Without Number, he also makes a game called Worlds Without Number, which is also loaded and loaded with tons and tons of big sandbox fantasy world stuff. You'll be making kingdoms and factions and pantheons of gods and magic and all kinds of stuff, and it's great. And you can totally adapt it, by the way, if you say, well, I play 5e, I play Dungeons and Dragons, I don't want to, this is a different game. You can build a whole big beautiful setting and then just say, okay, and then this is the setting that we're operating in, and you can play the game in 5th edition or any other game, and it's the same thing with Stars Without Numbers. You can do whatever it is you want to do. But again, back to the problem I was having, you got to figure out, what does fun mean for your players? So I found this old Matt Colville. It wasn't old at the time, it was new, but I'm old. He was talking about the campaign that he was running with a bunch of people from work, and he was trying to figure out what kind of game did he want to run with them? So he got a list. He made 3 different kinds of adventures, 3 different kinds of campaigns that he'd be willing to run. It was like 3, 4, 5 sentences per campaign type. And then after each one, he described it. And he said, this campaign is it's gonna be like this. And then he gave it sort of an indication of how much there would be of 3 critical elements that he thinks of when he's running his game. And it was something like politics and intrigue, tactical combat, and then I think the last one was exploration or something, but it doesn't matter for our purposes. And the point was, he gave them these options and he asked them, which one of these do you think is best? Which one of these is most appealing to you? And that's always stuck in my brain. I really thought about this a lot. And then when I found myself running this game, I thought, I could do something like that, but I would want to change it up a little bit. I'd want to sort of enhance and pull that out a little bit because I didn't have like one single solitary solid idea that I wanted to run. There were so many different ones I had to get an idea for how people felt about all these different things. So what I did was, first step, I thought about like 6 different kinds of campaigns that we could run. And then for each one of those, I came up with 2 adventure hooks. Now, if you're not used to running a sandbox game, an adventure hook is it's basically the whole game. It's what you're going to be doing. It's these little ideas, these potentials of stories. You're going to sprinkle them in front of your players on either a jobs board or maybe there's like some interstellar news service or something else, and you're going to put them in front of your players, and your players are going to look at all of them and talk about which one of them sounds interesting. They want to go here and do this job. They want to go over here and do that job. If you're running a sandbox game, you want to put these little hooks in front of your players and see which ones do they bite on. And so what I did is I took that. So that's very much the core activity that you're going to have when you're actually playing the game. And I pulled it all the way early, even before we had session 0. Notice we haven't talked about characters yet. We haven't talked about the kind of ship that we haven't talked about any of that. I haven't talked to my players about any of that stuff. This is before all of that good session 0, getting everybody started together. This is what I did. So this is the pre-session 0, and what I did was I took those 6 different kinds of adventures, and I thought of 2 adventure hooks per type. So I thought of 2 merchant ones and 2 scary alien ones, and I wrote them out, and it was just 2 or 3 sentences per. It was exactly the kind of thing that I would offer for them to do when we started the campaign. And you just make them broad enough, just generic enough that you can reuse them later and they won't remember back. And so you can use, if you have any real ideas or if you have any real modules that you've done this before, you just make it really, really simple. Just drill it down until it's like 2 or 3 sentences. It's just a quick description. Does it grab them? Yes or no? That's what you want to get for them. So I took these. So we started with 6 potential ideas, and then that turns into 12 adventure hooks. Very easy to come up with these. And then all of those, what I did is I put them in a Google form so I could send it to everybody. We'll talk more about Google Forms and the technology involved in this in a minute, but I put them in there. And the second thing I did, the second way that I expanded on Matt Colville's idea, is I asked them 2 questions per adventure. And I know this sounds like I gave my players a lot of homework. It wasn't, because what they ended up with in the end is just a Google form, and they're just scrolling and they're just giving, basically they're giving like a thumbs up and thumbs down for a bunch of adventure hooks, and they really dug it. They really enjoyed this. But what I did was I asked them 2 questions for each one of these adventures. The first question was, if I gave you this hook, if you heard this hook in a game, how interested would you be? How attractive is this to you? And I gave them the scale. I use the scale a lot at work, the scale of 1 to 5. It's very important. It's very fast. It's very understandable for people. They understand when they're really, really excited about something, or, all the way down to the bottom of the list where they're just full on saying, no, I hate this. I don't want this. This is terrible. Get me out of here. I don't want this. It's a very easy scale for people to understand. So the first thing I asked for all of these adventure hooks was, on a scale of 1 to 5, how interesting is this for you? The second question, and this is really important because I'm dealing with players. I have very, very little knowledge of these people. Half of these people were basically total strangers to me. The other half were friends, but we hadn't played a game together, so I needed to understand the context of how they like this stuff. The second question was, how tolerant would you be if everyone else in the group liked this hook? And the results from this were really, really interesting because we had a bunch of questions where I would give a hook and I would get a really strong reaction from someone. They would say 5 out of 5. I really like this adventure. It's something about exploring a derelict ship that's, it's some ghost ship and there's scary aliens on board and, that kind of thing. And they said, this sounds amazing. This sounds great. But at the same time, in the second question, they told me, but you know what? Be fine if we never did that. And what I got from that was, as much as you, my player, my very, very good, nice and wonderful player, as all my players are, that you really like this adventure, but you're also mature enough to understand that, the spider crawly aliens jumping out of us from air ducts, not everybody might be into that. And I'm okay if we don't go that route. And so altogether, that's what I ended up with in the Google form. It was a bunch of it would be a prompt. Here's an adventure hook. Here's a kind of thing that we want to do. How much do you like it? How tolerant would you be? And then at the bottom, of course, anytime you do this sort of thing, you always want to give the option for people to have just an open-ended, like a text field at the bottom. They can describe what they're doing. And then I also asked them which of the, because there were 12, there's a lot of adventures, and they could have listed a whole bunch of them as 5 out of 5. And I said, which one of these strikes you as the most interesting? Which one do you like the most? And so I sent this out to my players. They responded back in 36 hours, I think, at the outside, and that's because somebody was away from their computer for a day. This was very easy for them to respond to. Like I said, they open it up on their phone and they're just like click, click, click. They read, they give me a rating, they say how much they like it, they move on to the next one. It was really fast and easy for them to do, and I got great answers from this. I learned right away. Thankfully, we had a lot of alignment. There were like probably 7 or 8 out of the 12, everyone was a 4 or a 5 on, which is really all you need at this point. All I need to know is that I can run campaigns that involve, scoundrels doing smuggling and exploring old creepy ships, and then going on to old dead planets with ancient civilizations and seeing if you can find something valuable there. And that's all I need for the campaign. And I got to know right away what my players were really in line with, and I also knew a few of them they were a little cool on, and I said, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to run the merchant campaign. I'm not going to have them going out and making all the space money. Apparently some people don't like space money. Okay. And so I got all of that. Now I wanted to share this with you, not just because it worked really well for me, because I think it could work better for other people. I think this technique, it's a very lightweight technique. It's very easy to do. It's easy to get out there. And here's a few things that it didn't happen with me here when I used it, but from my own experience doing this sort of thing in other contexts, I could see this being a very powerful tool in a lot of other situations and a lot of other gaming groups. First of all, if you have a gaming group where you're not as lucky as I am, where all of my players seem very, very closely aligned on the kind of game they wanted to run, I think this would be a great way to spot if you have one player who, let's be nice about this, let's say they didn't get the same email description of the campaign that you want to run. They misread it somehow, and you've got 5 players coming to your game night, and 4 of them very, very much understand the kind of game that you want to run, and then the 5th one is just way out there. And you look at these results, you get the results back, and you say, oh man, I've got one player here who absolutely hates all of the stuff that everybody else wants to do, and they want to go in some completely wildly different direction. They want to do something totally different from what we're doing here. This is sending this form out before you've even had your session 0. You haven't even had everybody over for that first session 0 to make characters and figure out what everybody's doing. But by getting that out there, it's a very, very lightweight, easy way to figure this out. And then you can approach that player and you can say, I would recommend going to them and saying, hey, I just, I'm looking at these results. I want to make sure, I feel like we have a little misalignment. Did I think I described the game like this, but you're going over here. Are we on the same page? And if they say, oh, did you want to do that? Okay, I want to do that too, then great. But if they say, oh, I don't think that's really what I want, then again, this very, very early in the process before you've spent a lot of time and energy and there's any awkwardness around maybe having someone at the table who's, they're there for a different kind of experience. And talking about awkwardness, this is something, I get this a lot in my job as a facilitator. is something that we think a lot about is when you facilitate these kinds of conversations, you're trying to get people together and expressing their opinions and their ideas. And there are a million reasons why people won't give their opinions on things, especially if they hear other people in the room saying something different. If they're like the third one to speak and the first two people think that the idea proposed is a really good idea, but that person thinks that it's a bad idea, they're going to sort of soften their criticisms of it. Even if there are more people in the room who also don't like the idea, you can have this sort of cascade effect where the loudest voices or the first people to talk can really drive the conversation. So the beauty of having this Google form is everybody's just on their own. You're just at home sitting on your phone. You get an email, you say, hey, what's this? Tom sent me this Google's form. Oh, these are the ideas. And they can just like opinion. It's hard saying opinion a lot, but they can just fire that stuff off to you and they don't have to worry that like, oh, I'm the only one who's not going to like this. It's like, who cares? I'm at home. I'm filling this out. It's just going to the DM. It's not going to everybody else in the group. I don't have to worry about any of that. And that way you're going to get really good information from people about what it is that they want to do. And then once you have that, you can then go and spend your time fleshing out the sector of space or the kingdom or the forgotten land or the, whatever it is that you're running in your game. You'll have a really good idea from them. And then when they show up on session 0, you can say, all right, I heard what you guys like to do, and here's the setting. The setting is all of this, all this stuff that you said, and then they're going to be really excited, and then they are going to dive into making their characters and getting ready with the game. At least that's been my experience with this. Do me a favor, if you like this, if you want me to talk more about Session 0, I've got some more ideas in the backlog about doing some stuff for Session 0. I could talk about Stars Without Numbers a lot. It's a really interesting game. I could do a lot of these other kinds of games, but if you like, subscribe. If you leave a comment, especially if you have your own ideas, I would love to hear about this. If you have any thoughts, if you've done any Session 0, if you had good Session 0 or pre-0 early campaign prep kind of stuff, I would love to hear about it. That's really, I think, what's going to drive a lot of the conversation around here. In the meantime, it was great talking to you, and I hope you have a great game.